Today we're going to look at function notation. Now, you have probably seen something along the lines of y equals mx plus b. Okay? That's your standard linear equation. Now, what we're going to do, or at least in Math 1, not everything's going to be in y equals. You're still going to have some things in y equals, but you're also going to have something in what's called function notation. So instead of y equals, you'll probably see something like this, and that's read as f of x. Okay, so that's read f of x. It's exactly the same thing as a y equals. Okay, so pretty much in middle school everything was in y equals. Now in Math 1 you're still going to have some things in y equals, some things in function notation, and then when you get to Math 2 everything's in function notation, so they kind of wean you away from the y equals. Okay, so really the big part of it, just kind of remember y is exactly the same thing as f of x. Okay. Now, especially when we start getting into linear equations, you'll start seeing that more. But right now, we're going to focus just on the function notation, getting used to it, and what it means if we put a number in place of our x value. So if you need anything from the screen, go ahead and write it down because I'm going to clear the screen. Okay, so let's say we have a function. We'll start out really easy, like f of x equals 2x plus 1. Okay, that's a function notation equation. Basically what it's saying is that we're multiplying each x value by 2. So really you're just looking at this side of your equation. Okay, so it's 2 times x plus 1. So whatever x value is, we multiply it by 2, and then we add 1. Now using function notation, you're probably going to see something like this, like f of 2 equals. And what it's looking for is it basically wants you to plug in this 2 for x into that other equation. So really, it's f of 2 is really 2 times 2 plus 1. All we're really doing is we're just replacing that x value. So instead of this x value right here, it becomes a 2. Basically, you just take this number right here and plug it in for x into that equation. So we get 2 times 2 plus 1. Well, 2 times 2 is 4. 4 plus 1 is 5. So f of 2 is equal to 5. That's all you're doing. You're just plugging in that number for x. So really, for the most part for this lesson, we're just getting used to function notation, kind of understanding what it means, and if there's a number in place of x and the f of x function, basically we just plug that number in for x and solve. If you need anything from this one, go ahead and get it. I'm going to clear the screen. Alright, so let's say f of x equals 3x plus 2. Okay, so we're going to find a couple different problems. We're going to find f of 3, and we're going to find f of negative 2. Okay, so we're going to look at both of these two equations. So basically f of 3 just means that I'm going to plug in 3 in for x into that function. So it becomes 3 times 3 plus 2. And again, all we're doing is plugging in 3 in for x. Well, if we solve, 3 times 3 is 9, 9 plus 2 is 11. So that means f of 3 is equal to 11. Alright, for our second one, it's f of negative 2. Again, all we're going to do is plug in negative 2 in place of x. So it becomes 3 times negative 2 plus 2. Well, 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. So we have negative 6 plus 2. And negative 6 plus 2 is a negative 4. So that means f of negative 2 is equal to negative 4. So it doesn't matter if you're dealing with positive numbers or negative numbers. It's still dealing with function notation. And if you need anything from the screen, go ahead and get it. I'm going to clear it out. Alright. Now, it doesn't have to be f of x. It could be h of x, equals, 4x plus 1. Okay, so we could find h of 2, let's say. Well, again, just like the f value, the h does exactly the same thing. We're basically going to plug in 2 in for x every time we see it. So 4 times 2 is 8. 8 plus 1 is 9. So that means h of 2 is really equal to 9. Basically, in mathematics, your first function is always f. You're going to see f of x more often than anything else. But we are also going to start having more than one function sometimes too. So anytime you have something like that, they'll start going from f of x to h of x, sometimes g of x. Those are usually your three most common, but mostly you're just going to have to deal with f of x. Alright, I'm going to clear the screen again. Alright, let's say we have f of x is equal to x squared plus 3. And let's say we want to find f of 5. And let's say we want to find f of negative 2. Alright, well f of 5 again just means I'm going to plug in 5 in for x. 5 squared is 25. 25 plus 3 gives me 28. So that means f of 5 is equal to 28. Alright, where you're going to have to make sure that you're careful is anytime you are squaring a negative number. Okay, so f of negative 2 really means that it's negative 2, because I'm plugging in negative 2 for x, squared, plus 3. No, my finger's not working well there, sorry. Alright, now if you noticed, I haven't really done this any other time, but in this case, when I put that number in for x, when I put negative 2 in for x, I put it in parentheses. Because something interesting happens when you're squaring a negative number. Negative 2 squared is technically a positive 4. Okay, so that's really 4 plus 3, which gives us 7. Sorry, there you go. Alright, I'm going to erase something off on this left-hand side. So if you need anything from the left-hand side, go ahead and get it. Alright, I want to show you something. Okay, so let's say I had negative 2 squared, and I had that negative 2 in parentheses, much like I did on the right-hand side. Well, negative 2 squared, remember that square when we were talking about variables, that square means you have 2 of them. So what that technically means is negative 2 times negative 2. Well, you guys know a negative times a negative is a positive, so negative 2 times negative 2 is a positive 4, which is what we got over here on the right-hand side. If you don't put the negative in parentheses, okay, and this actually works in your calculator too, so if you try this in your calculator, you're still going to get this answer incorrect if you don't. So if I write it this way, if I write it as a negative 2 squared, and I don't have the negative 2 in parentheses, basically what your calculator is doing is it's taking the negative and putting it there, and then it's only squaring the 2, which means it's doing 2 times 2. Well, negative 2 times positive 2 is a negative 4. And if you notice, your answers are different. So anytime that you're using function notation, if you have a negative number and it's squared, make sure that you're putting that negative number in parentheses when you're squaring it, because it does come out to a positive number.